It was a quiet Tuesday morning in a small Ohio town. Gerald Morton, 68 years old, Vietnam veteran, Purple Heart recipient, walked into First National Bank just like he had every single month for the past 11 years. Same branch. Same routine. Same dignity. He was there to cash his VA disability check. $1,847. Money he had earned with his blood, his sacrifice, and 22 years of service to this country. He wasn't a wealthy man. That check was everything. Rent, groceries, medicine. His entire month depended on it. But that morning, something was very different. Gerald walked up to the teller window. The young woman behind the counter, her name tag read Ashley, looked up, glanced at Gerald from head to toe, and her expression shifted immediately. Not in a welcoming way. More like suspicion. Like he didn't belong there. Gerald noticed. But he said nothing. He had learned long ago to pick his battles. He slid his check across the counter along with his VA ID, his military records card, and his driver's license. Everything perfectly in order. Just like always. Just like 11 years of Tuesday mornings before this one. Ashley picked up the check. Stared at it far longer than necessary. Then, without making eye contact, she picked up the phone. Gerald waited. 1 minute. 2 minutes. 5 minutes passed. People behind him in line shifted impatiently. Gerald stood still. Straight back. Hands folded. The same posture he had learned in the military 45 years ago. A manager appeared from the back office. Mid-40s. Expensive suit. Cold eyes that swept over Gerald without warmth or recognition. He looked at the check. Looked at Gerald. Then leaned slightly forward and said in a low voice, "Sir, we have reason to believe this check may be fraudulent." Gerald felt the air leave his lungs. "I beg your pardon. We cannot cash this. Bank policy." Gerald kept his voice steady. He pointed to his VA ID, his military records card, his driver's license, his account number that had been active at this exact branch for 11 years. The manager didn't even glance at the documents. Instead, without warning, without explanation, without a single word of apology, Ashley reached across the counter, took the check from where it sat, and fed it directly into the shredder sitting right beside her desk. The sound of that machine tearing through his check felt like a slap across Gerald's face. The lobby went quiet. People turned and stared. Gerald stood there, a 68-year-old man who had survived a war, who had buried friends on foreign soil, who had come home with scars nobody could see, fighting back tears in a bank lobby in Ohio. He asked for the shredded pieces back. The manager refused. He asked for a written explanation of the decision. The manager turned and walked away. He asked to speak with someone more senior. Ashley told him to leave the premises before she called security. Gerald walked out into the parking lot. The morning sun was bright. Mockingly bright. He sat in his old Ford pickup, put both hands on the steering wheel, and stared straight ahead for a long moment. He didn't cry. Veterans don't break easy. But something hardened inside him in that moment. Something quiet and certain and completely unmovable. He picked up his phone and called his daughter. Patricia Morton was 44 years old, sharp as a blade, and had spent 18 years working as a paralegal before retiring to raise her kids. When her father told her what happened, she listened without interrupting. Every word. Every detail. When he finished, there was a brief silence. Then Patricia said, "Dad, don't worry about a single thing. I've got this." She wasn't angry. She was focused. And that was far more dangerous. Within 24 hours, Patricia had filed formal written complaints with 3 separate federal agencies, the Department of Veterans Affairs, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency. Each complaint was detailed, organized, and supported with dates, names, times, and the full sequence of events. She also reached out to a federal veterans advocacy organization with direct connections inside the Treasury Department. She didn't make noise about it. She didn't post on social media. She simply placed the information in the right hands and stepped back. Then they waited. 4 days passed. On the surface, nothing happened. But underneath, something very serious was already in motion. Because what Ashley and that manager had no idea about was this. Gerald Morton was not the first veteran at that branch to be treated this way. Over the past 8 months, 3 other veterans in the same county had filed similar complaints. Different days. Different tellers. Same branch. Same pattern. VA checks flagged as fraudulent. Checks rejected or destroyed. Elderly veterans turned away without explanation. Each of those checks had later been verified as completely legitimate. Federal investigators had quietly opened a preliminary inquiry into the branch 2 weeks before Gerald ever walked through that door. They had been watching. Waiting for one more piece of evidence strong enough to move forward. Gerald's complaint was the 4th. It was enough. On a Thursday morning, exactly 9 days after Ashley shredded that check, 2 unmarked dark vehicles pulled slowly into the bank parking lot. 4 federal agents walked through the front entrance. They did not raise their voices. They did not cause a scene. They simply presented their credentials to the branch manager, handed him a formal document, and began making requests. Complete transaction records for the past 14 months. All surveillance footage. The personnel files of every employee who had handled VA-related transactions. Everything. Ashley watched from behind her teller window. Her face went completely white. The branch manager looked at the lead agent and asked quietly if he should. The agent looked back at him without expression and said, "That would probably be a very good idea." The investigation that followed uncovered something deeply disturbing. The branch had been operating under an unlawful internal policy, undocumented, unwritten, but very real, that systematically flagged and rejected VA disability checks based on the age, appearance, and zip code of the recipients. Older veterans. Veterans from lower income areas. Veterans who, the branch had quietly calculated, were least likely to fight back. The destruction of Gerald's check was not a mistake. It was not an accident. It was the deliberate destruction of a federal financial instrument. A serious federal crime. Ashley was terminated within the week. The branch manager was placed on indefinite suspension pending full federal review. The bank's parent company, facing the possibility of criminal exposure across multiple locations, launched an emergency internal audit spanning 14 branches in 3 states. 2 senior executives were asked to step down during the investigation. Gerald Morton received a formal written apology from the bank's National Executive Office. He received full reimbursement of his check. He received a financial settlement whose exact amount was not disclosed. He donated every single dollar of that settlement to a local veterans housing charity that helped homeless former soldiers find stable homes. He never spoke to the press. He never asked for recognition. He never once called himself a hero. He simply said, when Patricia asked him how he felt, "I just wanted what was right. And we got it." Moral of the story. Gerald Morton didn't win because he was loud. He didn't win because he was powerful or connected or wealthy. He won because he refused to disappear. He stood in his truth quietly, with dignity, and he let justice do the rest. In a world that sometimes tries to make good people feel small, the most powerful thing any of us can do is simply refuse to be invisible. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button and drop your thoughts in the comments below. There are people in this world doing the right thing every single day, and their stories deserve to be heard. More powerful, real, life-changing stories are coming. Don't miss a